Could you talk us through what happened over the last couple of weeks here in Leinster House, or months?
Yeah, Sarah, listen, it's incredibly frustrating what happened over the last number of months here in Leinster House. First of all, I do want to pay tribute to Maria. Maria was a fantastic candidate. First of all, she is an independent, so she was running her own campaign. She was brilliant, she's articulate, she's intelligent. She cuts through the nonsense and gets her message across really well. And she's a woman with a backbone, willing to stand up for what she believes in. And I've no doubt, had she been in this election, that she would have done very well, possibly won the presidential election, but there's no doubt come within the top 3 places. So I suppose the background to this is, during the summer, we were all having conversations about who's going to run in the presidential election. I remember myself and yourself and having a chat around it. And certain names were being floated. So one of the conversations I had with you at the time actually was, we should ring Maria Steen to see where she's at, because rather than making a decision, we should know if she's going to run, because you can't make a decision without, her. So I called her, and at the time, as it happened, she said she was giving this serious thought. She was thinking about it independently, obviously, of ourselves. And I was delighted to hear that. So the summer rolled on a little bit, and people started to talk to TDs and senators in Leinster House. And, I don't know if people realise this, but TDs and senators, especially amongst independents, can be very, very cautious in making decisions, keep their cards very close to their chest. And, I was getting frustrated that time was going by, and we needed to crystallise a decision fast in relation to this. And so we decided to create a new initiative, a selection caucus. And we held it here. We got in contact with every TD and senator that was free here, and 10 came along, 10 good people came along. They listened to 4 candidates, they selected Maria, and out of those 10, the 10 gave her a nomination. So that created an impetus, it created a momentum, and then it meant that we just had to, achieve 10 more in relation to that. So Maria set out, obviously she was working in the councils as well, so she was under fierce pressure. So her campaign started to contact TDs and senators here, as did we, to try and mobilise them to come on. And wonderfully, 3 more came on. So Aubrey McCarthy, Michael Healy-Rae, and also Marion Harkin came along. And actually I want to pay tribute to Marion and to Michael, because both of them are government TDs. So they took a little bit of a risk to select a opposition independent in these terms. And we were frustrated for 2 reasons. And first of all, the government themselves, right? Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, I believe, pulled up the ladder to try and stop Maria getting on the ballot. Why? Because they knew that Maria was sharp and would make a phenomenal impact. They were fearful of Maria being part of that election campaign. So I've no idea. First, Simon Harris stated that councillors in Fine Gael had to block. Now that hasn't been seen in 35 years, as far as I can see. Like Enda Kenny said in 2011 that Fine Gael would never ask their councillors to block, that they could abstain if they wanted in councils. So it became very clear that the threshold through the councils was not going to be achieved, because both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were blocking left, right and centre. And that was an incredible situation, because it meant that, the pressure was on here in Leinster House. So then we started to talk about to TDs and senators again, and incredibly, a block of TDs and senators wouldn't answer the phone. Now this set off alarm bells in my mind and a lot of other people's minds. So, you have very senior senators and TDs who simply came to the view that they weren't going to talk to anybody about this. Now, out of common courtesy and decency, you either pick up the phone and you say, no, I won't nominate, I might nominate, give me time to think about it, I'll get back to you, or yes, I will nominate. There's 3 obvious things a person does. It got so bad that there's the senators in here who their electorates are the councillors across the country. These senators were on the phone to these councillors looking for votes off them, and this January, and now they weren't answering these councillors themselves. Now, a senator who has an electorate of councillors, as you know yourself, is accountable to those councillors, is responsible to those councillors, and has a goddamn responsibility to pick up the phone to them. Yeah. And that didn't happen at all. And so, people thought it was odd.
Just to clarify, these are independent councillors contacting independent senators.
Yes.
Their electorate.
Yeah, so there has been a tradition over the last few years that independents push independence. And that's fine. I personally don't agree with it. I think people should vote on the basis of policy, who they agree with. It doesn't make sense to me that a person would vote for somebody who has a direct opposite policy than you just because they're an independent. But it's fine, that has been their tradition. But Maria is also an independent as well. So logic would dictate that the circuit will be closed by the councillors contacting the senators, independent senators, and the independent senators voting for an independent candidate for it. But that didn't happen. And indeed, you mentioned in the Shannon that 100, I think...
75 to 100 independent councillors contacted independent senators asking them to nominate Maria, no matter their thoughts on her policies or where she stood on things, just to allow them and to allow their constituents a different voice on the ballot. Yeah.
So that's basically a anti-democratic situation that happened. It seems to be that there's 5 or 6 people, independents, around one individual who's very, very senior here. The same individual is well known. He had picked up the phone to Maria during the last referendums. He had asked Maria to share a front seat in a press conference with him so that they could get the view across around why the referendums should be defeated. And yet that same individual wouldn't pick up the phone to Maria in relation to this, which is, I think, shocking and poor. And listen, it's just hard to get your head around how that could happen. So we had 2 things happening, which were unusual. 1, a government pulling up the ladder, blocking the councils. And 2, we had so-called independent senators and some TDs in here blocking the route in Leinster House as well. And interestingly enough, I know of a Sinn Féin TD who wanted to sign it, who was told not to, and I know of a number of Fianna Fáil TDs who wanted to sign it, and I believe Micheál Martin came down like a ton of bricks in terms of phone calls in relation to that. So it does feel to me that Maria was blocked.
Concerted effort.
That there was a concerted effort to block Maria from this. Not for logical reasons, and we made the point that you didn't have to support Maria's politics to select her. Indeed, half the people who had already nominated her didn't support her politics. But
understood that there was a requirement out there from the public and a demand that this was wanted. The last couple of days, Peadar, Maria Steen has been trending for the last 2 days on Twitter, and there's still a lot of anger built up out there. What has to happen next?
So on your first point, it has been very much an objective of AIM2 that the competition of ideas is the best way to achieve a good democracy. The best ideas percolate to the top, becomes policy, and as a country, we move on. But for the last 20 years, probably, there's been a big effort, I believe, by the political establishment to stop people competing in the marketplace of ideas. And I think this is one of the examples of it. And the reasons why it's important, not only that you get the best ideas from it, but if you lock or are seen to lock a section of society out of the debate in a country, those people get frustrated, they get angry, and things get polarized. And actually what some of those people are pushed to, under the table, to where the ne'er-do-wells try to take advantage of that anger and frustration for a negative purpose. It is our job as political leaders, AIM2 has always felt, to make sure that no matter what issue it is, no matter how prickly of an issue it is, we need to show that people's voices are heard and listened to in here, in Leinster House, and in this presidential election. So on your question of what's next, there's a lot of anger. You saw the Joe Duffy show yesterday was inundated with it. We're getting emails and phone calls left, right and centre on it. People are frustrated. They're calling for a spoil your vote situation. And, I would be cautious about the issue of spoiling your vote. And I'll tell you why. Because the danger with the spoil your vote is it could allow for the worst candidate to get elected. Yeah. And sometimes, even in this limited list, you have to vote for the least worst to make sure. I actually think it'd be in Heather Humphrey's interest for a vote to be spoiled, or even Jim Gavin's interest to a vote to be spoiled. Now, as a party, we haven't made a decision on that. We're going to meet as an Ard Corlia, and we're going to discuss the issue. My instinct is that it is not the best thing. But I will say this, right? There's an awful lot of anger out there. Yeah. Now, the media and the political establishment will want to move on and say it's past and forget about it and, you know, dissipate. But if we want to really make a change, anger is not a solution or a policy. What you need to do is you need to get politically active. And imagine, you know, if we had a second senator along with you, if we had another TD along with myself and Paul in the Dáil, today Maria would be a presidential candidate and she would be flying the flag for all these individuals. So, you know, membership plus activism equals elected reps, and elected reps means change in situations like this. So I would ask people, don't stand idly by, don't sit in the sidelines. We need help to do the work that you want us to do. Click on the link, join into, and get involved. And, you know, some people join just to support us. Other people join us and they might do 4 or 5 hours a year help. And other people get involved in the monthly activities that we do. All of those people are welcome. But I tell you, if you want to make sure you're not at the same place, in the next occasion, whether it's a referendum, whether it's a presidential election, whether it's an issue around free speech, you know, whether it's an issue around immigration, whether it's an issue around, you know, all of these really big questions, translate your anger and frustration into membership, and your voice will be heard here in Leinster House.
And membership of a party that your policies agree with.
Yeah, so one of the things we're different than the other political parties is we have an Ordesh, and at Ordesh, all the members come and they vote for motions, and the motions that win those votes become party policy, and you and I, whether we like it or not, have to go in here into Leinster House and articulate those policies. And the beauty of that is that the membership are the actual leaders. And this is quite different than Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, for example. Those political parties see their members as canvas fodder. People to go knock on the doors during an election, put up posters, etc. But they ignore them. And you know, you saw Jim Gavin being selected against nearly the wishes of many of their TDs, many of their councillors, never mind even asking their membership. So we are a party where our membership are the leaders of the party. So, and that's how it works. Your voice becomes policy, and then we implement that policy in here. So listen, I think thanks very much for the chat here today. I appreciate it. While we are frustrated and disappointed, I know for a fact that Maria will make a contribution sometime into the future here in Leinster House in some manner. And I think that you know, a lot of things happen for a reason. But you know, we need to keep pushing. And you know, I think the differences between ourselves and maybe the other smaller parties and the other independents is we pull all the levers at our disposal to make the change that's necessary. We don't wait until the last day or the second last day or the third last day before an important decision has to be made. And that initiative, that caucus, that's actually quite revolutionary here, because nobody's ever gone out of their way to create a structure where people can work together. And I hope there's going to be a template into the future for better work.